Hello, everyone, and thank you, Katya, for joining us today to speak with us and answer some questions about composing and music theater and your process and what you do. We're pleased to have you here with us today. You are a musical theater composer of the award-winning Resident Alien and the Useful Citizen. Um, you currently teach at Boston Conservatory at Berklee in Boston, Massachusetts, and here you are today with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Katya.
So, first thing we want to ask is musicians often have more than one job, more than two jobs. What are yours? What do you do and where?
So I come from the classical piano world, but when I was about 25, I transitioned into musical theater. And so I started by music directing, which is something that I still do. And that led me to academia. So I just finished my 10th year as a full-time professor of musical theater. And I'm in my third institution now. I was in very rural North Carolina, and then I was in Mid-Hudson Valley of New York, and now I'm in Boston. And so I've taught many different aspects of musical theater, from music theory, musical theater history, and performance. And now I'm lucky enough to also get to teach writing at BOCO.
So you said that you started with classical music. Can you explain the shift that happened that kind of led you where you are now?
So I'm from Ukraine, and in Ukraine, I was always a poet and a writer of words alongside being a musician. And then when I came to America, I felt very insecure about my English and, humor, pop culture references and things like that for a long time. So I focused on music, and I went to college and graduate school for classical music, and I met Randi by being her studio accompanist when I was a collaborative piano major for grad school. But I discovered musical theater when I was in high school, and they found me and put me in the pit orchestra. And so I always wanted to not be alone. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do chamber music and not solo piano, because I love to be in a room with other people and I don't want to be in the spotlight. I like to be the support. So music direction is the perfect kind of thing for my personality, is where I'm in charge of some things, but I'm not in charge of all the things. And I get to be in the room with other people. And so my classical skills and chamber music skills and accompanying for vocalist skills have come in super handy. I use them every day. I'm so glad that I have that classical training. And without it, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing now. But I think when I started writing for the musical theater, when I felt that my English was good enough, that kind of tandem of being a writer and a music director and a coach, it all informs each other and helps each other. And I really love teaching. I love college. I just want to be around college all the time. So that's kind of where my life led me, and I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I will say you were a wonderful um, accompanist for the
Thank you.
singers at that time. Um, I enjoyed working with you for sure. Who are your creative influences at this point?
Stephen Sondheim was probably my gateway composer who reconciled my classical training with this whole theater thing. And, because I come from classical music, I'm into sophisticated harmonies and dissonance, which a lot of musical theater doesn't have. And that's not my favorite. But so Sondheim was someone who made my ears perk up and think, oh, wow, you can have that sophistication and yet write for the theater. And then I also discovered Adam Gettle, who also happens to be the grandson of Richard Rodgers and son of Mary Rodgers. So, and his music is so, I'm so jealous of his mind. I wish my mind worked in that way. Um, and then people like Scott Frankel, who wrote music for Grey Gardens. So those people are ones that I aspire to be like. There's also a composer called Lawrence O'Keefe who wrote Legally Blonde and Bad Boy, and he is just so funny and witty, and I appreciate that too. So he is a living composer who is kind of my hero.
How is it different to write for the theater than to write art songs? Or what are those differences to you?
So I never wanted to be a composer. I never pursued this of anything that would be called a sonata or or even setting. I've set some poems to music, but not a lot. I think what draws me to theater is that you write for character and circumstances. And so I love not having too many options. I love having parameters. So when you get to ask yourself, but would this person say this? And wait, but this person is in distress. Would they really have perfect rhymes and a structure? Or is this, what does this person want from the other character on stage? So, and what is their education level and what time period is this? And how old are they? How would they speak? How would they sound? So asking yourself these questions gives you a framework to work within, whereas I think there's a lot more freedom when writing in any other musical genre. And I don't like freedom. I like having something to grab onto,
Right.
right? And especially because I have worked with collaborators, but nowadays I work alone and I don't have anybody asking me those questions. So I have to ask them of myself. So then asking from the point of view of the drama is really helpful. And it's kind of like my teacher and mentor.
So is your process then about creating the framework, and then going to words and then music, or
I'm
characters?
actually, I am a words first person.
Mhm.
I've never written music first, I don't think, because I want to know what they're saying. Um, I think in my mind, the words always come with at least the rhythm and a melodic shape. And I've actually, because I'm a pianist and because I play a lot of other people's music, my hands tend to go to familiar places. So I've been challenging myself to not start at the piano. I usually start in the shower or on the subway or while walking my dog. And I think about what I want to say, and then I try to transcribe it, using the piano. Because if I start at the piano, I'm going to play you a Jason Robert Brown song or whatever musical I'm working on right now as a music director. So I have to kind of start with words and story for that reason.
Well, that's fabulous. Huh.
That's
That's
really,
always good for singers to know, for
yeah,
your artists to know, that they really should approach it from the words first. And they'll
Oh,
find
yeah.
freedom in the words, which is wonderful.
And when I coach, sometimes I have people recite the lyrics before they know what the music sounds like, just to see where did you breathe? Where did you take time? And can we, obviously, music gives you more restrictions, but can you translate some of your choices once you know the music?
That's great. What kind of stories are you interested in telling these days?
So, I've been evolving over time, and as I get older, I have different ideas about what I want to write about. But I love writing for and about women, where women aren't somebody's love interest, where they're really the hero of the story. And you've probably heard about the Bechdel test, and that's very hard to pass because there's
very,
usually some kind of love or talking about a man in musicals. But I tried to pass it at least in some parts of whatever I'm writing. Um, I like complex women. And when I present my works in something like the BMI workshop, where I've been attending for the last 13 years. It's a Tony Award winning workshop that's completely free. And you can be a writer in it for 2 years, and then you can audition for the third year, but the third year is like the forever year. So basically, you can get feedback from luminaries like Maury Yeston and Bobby and Kristen Lopez, like all the big names in musical theater, plus your regular mentors and your peers, because musical theater is meant to be heard, not read. So you don't really know what it's going to be like until somebody hears it and gives you feedback. And so when I go there, something I rub up against all the time is people saying that specifically female characters are unlikable, or am I supposed to root for them? Or is she the one I'm rooting for? And so I'm fighting this with all my might because we seem to love complex male characters. I mean, I love Mad Men, and people love, oh my God, Breaking Bad, and they're completely fine with these highly flawed, controversial male characters. Why not female ones? So I think that's been my theme in all of my shows. And my first big musical that I'm proud of is about immigration and a little bit about my own experience, but really a consolidation of many people's experiences. Mine wasn't as dramatic as it is in the show. And again, there's a mother and a daughter in it, and they both are flawed and they make mistakes. I wrote a musical about poverty, that's The Useful Citizen, and about this woman who is supposedly a champion for poverty, but she's also very flawed and very judgmental of the people she's supposed to help. And so finding that balance of writing women who are powerful and have agency and yet are not maybe 100% likable and make mistakes, that's something I'm interested in both watching and writing about.
Do you have a favorite song or moment in your musicals that you um, hum in the shower?
um, I so in my musical Resident Alien, which I'll probably have to rename because there's now a TV show by that name, and it's actually about aliens, but mine is about immigration. I started writing it from the middle. I wrote the Act One finale first, and then I wrote Act One, and then I wrote Act Two. But I used to be a ballet accompanist at NYU, where I went to school for one of my degrees. And I found it to be a very difficult job. And so I started writing a song about that. And then it turned into this whole thing. So one of the characters in Resident Alien is a mother who is a pianist, but like many immigrants, she comes to America and has to change careers, at least temporarily. And so she works as a home aide to a wealthy elderly lady. And the lady has a piano and she doesn't understand that Svetlana, the main character, that she's a professional pianist. And she says, but you know, I don't want you to touch the piano, like clean everything except the piano. That's very precious. You don't understand how to use it. And one day the lady catches her playing the piano beautifully. And she says, oh, wait a minute. I had no idea that you had a life before all this, right? And so then Svetlana is emboldened to ask her, can you write me a recommendation for a, like a part-time job being a ballet accompanist in a college? And then she realizes she doesn't actually know how to play for ballet. So, and then she goes into musical theater and then she becomes a church musician. So, you know, the gigging life. And so as she's learning English, she's also learning all these different musical languages. And this is a little bit autobiographical too, right? Because even within music, there are many different languages and many different skills. And as she is uh, getting all these gigs, you know, some time passes, and at the end of the song, she says, "Oh, and now I speak English." Right? And like, I'm ready to fly and be out there. So that song is called I Speak Music, and it's hopefully funny, but also true.
That's terrific.
Wow. And
Do you have, um, is that recorded?
Yes, so I was very lucky to win something called the Weston New Musical Award for that show. And
Okay.
so Weston is a theater in Vermont. And so I hope they're still doing this, but a lot of really great musicals won this award. But part of the award is that you get a performance, one in Vermont, one in New York, and you also get a demo recording produced by Kurt Deutsch of Ghostlight Records, which is really cool. And it's just piano and you can have up to 5 singers. So that song was recorded with some Broadway talent as part of that award.
kind of shifting. So, you know, we're talking about your process and, you know, your background. And now you obviously have all of these students that you are teaching and inspiring who at some point will be off in the world, kind of, you know, hopefully doing this themselves too. So we were looking at some stats, and I'm sure you've heard of Maestro Music.
Oh, yeah, I'm a member.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so figured, yeah.
Mhm.
So they shared something in 2020 or maybe in 2022, but they said from 2009 to 2020, 8% of new Broadway scores were by women. We imagine that the numbers increased a little bit since then, but knowing the hurdles that female identifying and people of color face when trying to get their music played and appreciated and give it like live time, how do you prepare the students that you teach for the realities of the way the world is and what they might face once they're out in the world?
So, okay, I'm about to go off.
I know
Because
it's a
this is
very loaded question. Yeah.
this is a subject that's very dear to my heart. I'm a member of Maestra. I've been a Maestra mentor to a couple of folks who are composers or lyricists. I just finished a mentorship, in fact, so we talked about it all the time. So I also have several friends who have had Broadway / off-Broadway shows this year, and they're still going on. So that's really exciting. So here's what I've always been telling students, because I teach mostly performers and now I'm starting to teach writers. I don't believe in living 100% by going and auditioning, because it's maybe 10% what you're doing and 90% what the creative team is thinking and what they're looking for, and people's clout and getting butts in seats and all these considerations that have nothing to do with you. So it's a very difficult path for an actor, and with writers even more so, because you can't do anything without money. So if nobody believes in your work and finances it, then what are you going to do? And so I believe in creating your own opportunities, and I believe in coming up together with cohorts of other people who do exactly what you do, but even more so, people who do complementary things. And I see this over and over again, people who, come up together. If one of them reaches a certain level of fame, they pull up their friends, and then maybe the other one has more clout, and then they pull up their friends. So I believe in, especially women, championing each other and supporting each other and using your moment in the spotlight to pull up your friends. And then sometimes it really works out and it's a beautiful thing. And that's what I tell students.
That's awesome. And I feel like, a lot of people could use a little more of that like collaborative kind of mindset, is instead of like, if I'm doing this, then, or you're doing this, then I can't do that, maybe make it more of like we can all do it together and help each other out.
Right.
Do you have any other advice that you give for someone who's interested in composing for music theater? They want to start out, they don't know what to do, they don't know where to begin. Like, what would you say to that kind of person?
I mean, I have a whole list of opportunities and things that I share with people, and some of them are things that I was lucky enough to do and others I haven't, but I know they're out there and they're great. I would say, first of all, write what you want to write, and people will always ask you, but who is this for? Who is your intended audience? But don't try to guess what people want. If you are passionate about something, you're going to bring people along. I mean, there's some things I never thought I would like if I read the description, but then the execution was so amazing that I was like, I'm on board with this because it's so good, right? So I think you shouldn't try to pander. I think you should write what you want to say and it will come across. And I would also say, it's kind of like with dance, no matter what level you are at, you have to go to dance class because somebody has to see you and give you feedback. So the same with writing, you can't just be writing alone and not get feedback, and it can be very painful. I've never had a problem getting feedback as a pianist. Like, that was just par for the course, it's just a lesson. But as a writer, it can be very touchy. It's like killing your babies, and you've put a lot of thought into it, and then it turns out it's unclear or it makes no sense. And so I'm in my 40s and I've been doing this for a long time, but I still, I live in Boston, but I still go to New York and go to the BMI workshop, and I'm actually joining a similar thing in Boston this upcoming year. You have to present your work to peers. You can't always present it to audiences because it's a financial thing, it's a time thing, but at least present it to someone who is smart and also a writer and is rooting for you and can give you professional kind of feedback before you put it in front of all people.
That's great. Yeah, like, don't be afraid to like hear what people think.
Yeah, and you put it through the calendar. You won't be able to take all the feedback. That's just a mess. But some things will resonate with you, and you have to take it and sleep on it and say, okay, that was completely useless, but this really resonated with me. So maybe there's something there.
Where can we find your music and your recordings?
So on my website, you can find everything else. But I have something people might be interested in is I have a theatrical song cycle called Women on Love as opposed to In Love. That's a novel. And it's constantly evolving because as I get older, I have more things to say about more things. And so it's a very easily producible show. You can do it with 4 or 5 female identifying characters singing about 20-year-old problems and 60-year-old problems and everything in between. And also the songs stand alone. And so if anybody's looking for things in a recital, they don't need any context. And some of them are group numbers and some of them are solos. So it's been done a lot, like it's been done in a college, and then we took out some of the older songs and put in some younger ones. It's been done with people of all ages in Missouri, and then we just did it as is. It's been done in concert a lot. So you can find that. And then I have a couple of book musicals
Who
as
published
well.
that? I'm sorry.
It's actually not published. So if somebody, I sell my sheet music. Some of my music can be found on musicnodes.com. And that's through I'm sure you've heard about the La Talena competition.
Yeah.
So during the pandemic, they started this initiative that they created a songbook and they solicited composers who are a little bit crossover that they write for the theater, but it also has that kind of more sophisticated, not to toot my own horn, but I'm one of those people, and they actually published 3 of my songs on their website.
So that songbook can be,
Yeah, it's accessible to anyone. It's not just for the people involved in the competition.
that's great.
That's awesome.
Wonderful. Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we want to say thank you so much. Katya, we thought this was a wonderful interview. It's great to spend some time with you.
Thank you. And it's so good to see you. It's been a long
Yeah.
time.
It's just wonderful. And I know that people can visit your website for your bio and links. We'll get that music linked to your song.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.